Our world has never been in more danger. Artemis Fowl.
Hey everybody, it's Charlie. They dropped a new Artemis Fowl trailer. I got a bunch of requests to do a video about it, explaining the story and some of the Easter eggs. The director is Kenneth Branagh. He directed the first Thor movie. He talked a lot about the Thor movie when talking about Artemis Fowl. What a coincidence. Disney franchise, they would also be tying it to the Marvel stuff. So if you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. We're doing an IMAX ticket giveaway. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and leave a comment on the video. The movie is based on the very first book. It's a series of books just like Harry Potter, but it takes a more science fiction bend on the fantasy magic tropes. So it's a lot of magic and science fiction together instead of just being magic like the Harry Potter series. The protagonist, as you can see, is a 12-year-old Artemis Fowl. He's a child prodigy and head of his family's criminal empire, the Fowl criminal empire. He took over from his father. There might be some sort of explainer that they have at the beginning of the movie explaining how it is he became head of their family, because his father was a very big figure. He disappeared in this big scheme that he was trying to pull. Artemis learns about the family's criminal enterprise, takes it over because he's so smart, and because he's a child, he has a relatively gray morality because they're doing very bad things because they're criminals, but the story is all about the push-pull between the good and evil inside him because he's part of an evil family and starts out doing very selfish things with his abilities, but becomes a hero. So in that same way, Kenneth Branagh tied this to the Thor series. So like it starts out where you try to blend the world of science and magic like they do in the Marvel Universe with the Thor Asgardian technology. It seems like magic, but it's really super advanced science. They even get into that during the Doctor Strange movie about how they weave their spells by pulling dark energy from another dimension. Within the world of the story, there's a couple different groups of people. You have Artemis Fowl, who's a normal human, just incredibly smart. Then you have the world of the fairies and magical creatures, which live very far below the earth. The place where they live is called Haven City, where you see this car flying around with this big magical vista. Like that's them going beneath the earth into Haven City. There are a couple really important places here, but you don't go to some of them till the later books. It's a lot like the Harry Potter books where you dip your toe in these magical places that are all around you that you never knew about. Then you slowly start to see them throughout the series. And assuming that this gets sequels, you'll just see the rest of them. Because Haven City is supposed to be one of the last places on Earth that fairies can exist without having to worry about being bothered by humans. Their other big city is Atlantis. I know we're all talking about Atlantis because of the Aquaman movie that's coming up later this month. This movie isn't coming out till next summer, so this is just meant to be like an early teaser to show you what the world is going to look like, what the characters are going to look like. But all the footage they show off essentially tells you the entire story of the first book. So when Artemis takes over his family's criminal enterprise, he learns that the event that caused his father's disappearance also wiped out their family's fortune. So because he's a genius and it's a criminal family, that's where the heist aspect of the story picks up, because that's sort of what sets things off. He wants to pull an epic score to replenish his family's gold, and he's had this long-running theory that fairies exist. The relationship between humans and fairies is a lot like muggles and magical people in the Harry Potter series. They make it so that the humans don't know that they exist, but really smart people like Artemis start to figure it out. So what you see in the trailer is him going to Ho Chi Minh City like he does during the first book, finding a really drunk fairy and tricking or conning that person into giving him their special Book of the People, which is like their compendium of fairy knowledge and magical spells. So when you see all this code and cipher all over the trailer, that's actually the fairy language that Artemis is able to decode because he's a genius. So he learns about all their tricks, where they live, what their history is. So he uses that knowledge to trap a fairy and ransom them back to the other fairies for a shit ton of gold. Surprise, surprise, the fairy that he traps winds up being his love interest. And I don't see any good footage of her in here, but her name is Captain Holly. She's a member of the Lower Elements Police. So the fairy people have their own police force. Commander Holly is like a really young member of that team. The main antagonist is Judi Dench's character, Commander Root. But she's the one doing the voiceover in the trailer, talking about the differences between the world of fairy, the world of man, about how things are getting worse and worse between them. So when you see all these spaceships coming across the bay and this big battle here going on with people shooting at each other, This is all probably towards the end of the story, because when Artemis is ransoming Captain Holly back to the lower elements police, he keeps her locked inside Fowl Manor using fairy knowledge from the special book that he stole to trap her. Part of the problem that Artemis has is that fairies are all incredibly powerful magical people, but they do have certain rules that they're bound by. They have to replenish their magic every once in a while, so he has to learn to use that knowledge against him. So a big part of, especially the big action set pieces later in the film, is him outwitting these crazy powerful magical beings. But like I said, a big part of Artemis's arc during the series is going from being a very selfish person at the beginning of the story to being a very selfless person at the end of the story. So it's a really long-running series. He develops a relationship with Captain Holly, but in the same way that the Harry Potter novels sort of pace out the relationships between the characters, because they're all really young when the story starts out, they grow as the series goes on. You really don't see them start to acknowledge their feelings for each other till much, much later, so I don't know how much they're going to get into that during this first series. But the really interesting thing that they do is that there's an epilogue at the end of the first book where you have a character narrating as if he's remembering all the events of the book in the future. Like this is decades in the future, and someone's reviewing a case file on Artemis Fowl. The person doing this is Dr. Argon. He's the leader of the J. Argon Institute, which is sort of this insane asylum for incredibly rich people inside Haven City, the world of the fairies. So it reads like this. Now that you have reviewed the case file, you must realize what a dangerous creature this Fowl is, talking about Artemis Fowl. There is a tendency to romanticize Artemis, to attribute to him qualities that he does not possess. The fact that he used his wish to heal his mother is not a sign of affection. He did it simply because the social services were already investigating his case, and it was only a matter of time before he was put into care. Remember, Artemis Fowl is 12 years old, so if his mother weren't able to care for him when his father disappeared, child services in the real world would pick him up and he'd get thrown into foster care. The case file goes on. It says, he kept the existence of the people, talking about fairies, quiet only so that he could continue to exploit them over the years, which he did on several occasions. His one mistake was leaving Captain Short alive. Holly became the LEP's, Lower Elements Police's, foremost expert in the Artemis Fowl cases and was invaluable in the fight against the people's most feared enemy. This fight was to continue across several decades. Ironically, the greatest triumph for both protagonists was the time that they were forced to cooperate during the Goblin insurgents, but that's another story. And then it says details on this are 94% accurate, 6% unavoidable extrapolation. So it's sort of the doctor of this psychological facility trying to examine Artemis in context, thinking of him as more of a villain in their story. But remember, this is the fairies seeing Artemis as their mortal enemy because he exploits them on so many occasions, and those different occasions wind up being the events of the different books in the series. So if you want to tie this back to the Thor movies, think of Artemis Fowl as a Loki-type character. A lot of people see him as a villain, even though a lot of times what he's doing is ultimately towards a greater purpose, even though, during each step it might seem like he's trying to throw you under the bus. But what'll happen is we're supposed to get that Avengers 4 trailer really soon, other big Disney trailer, so if we get any news about that, I will totally post a video. Click here for that brand new Captain Marvel trailer, and click here to rewatch that big Lion King remake trailer. Thank you so much for watching. Everybody stay awesome. I'll see you guys tonight.